So I think we have we're almost out of time. I would like to get in one question. Let me just say two things. One is that part of the study that Richard is doing with the Shanker Institute involves a study of 9 urban school districts. What is happening to teachers of color over a period of 10 years. And we had actually hoped to be able to finish the study in the fall, but I've had to use my experience as a bare-knuckled union leader and threaten lawsuits to actually extract, and we're still in the process of doing that, to extract the data from school districts which the law entitles everyone to through freedom of information. Because what is happening in a number of those cities is things that the people who are responsible for them don't want open to public scrutiny. Let me also tell you that the Shanker Institute is sponsoring a number of panels at this conference, and the next one will be on the social side of teaching, which examines the fallacies in the dominant looking at the teaching profession, that, you know, it's all a matter of qualities in the individual teachers as opposed to the social conditions and the social networks in education, and that will be at 11:30 in room 152B. Let's take one or two quick questions. And yes.
Okay, so I'm just curious if you guys have some advice. I'm from Minnesota, and we're working on mobilizing teachers of color and helping to create mentoring programs. But I'm having a really hard time just reaching these folks. So figuring out, because of self-identification, it's just, I'm having a hard time getting access to contact information, that kind of thing. So when you mentioned extracting data, I'm just wondering if you guys have any suggestions, if we're working on a local level or a state level.
Anyone?
I should speak because I'm a teacher of color.
And these folks.
I appreciate that. I'll just say quickly, I also feel like if you, and this goes right back, right? So if you're in a situation where 99% of your energy feels like you're just trying to keep your classroom up, then it really becomes hard to take that 1% that's left and divvy it up amongst a bunch of different things. I mean, I'm blessed to be able to do the things that I do, but I can't say a lot of my colleagues are able to, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room feel the same way. But I guess for me, it's all about benefit. So what would be the benefit in your situation for all these folks to come together? And, you know, is it about cookies? Is it about bagels? Is it about orange juice? Or is there something more meaningful, more in depth? Are you going to be able to get more real about some of the issues that are happening with teachers of color? What I often find too is when I go to a lot of these conferences, people like they'll talk in general in these like big open spaces, but then they'll put me to the side and be like, bro, thank you for saying that. And I'm always like, saying what? It's like, oh, talking about the issues that a lot of us face. Not about salaries, not about all these other things, but about the things that happen when we talk about intersectionality, race, class, and gender, things that we need to keep putting to the fore when we have these discussions about teachers who are most underrepresented. So are those conversations, because I know some teachers in Minnesota as well, if you can have those conversations put up in front and create safe spaces for them to have those conversations, I think you'll attract more folk.
Well, and I just say this because I'm a staff person with Education Minnesota who works with our committee, our state committee, and we're just trying to get so many things rolling, but we're having a hard time just connecting and then finding out what are the best ways that we can benefit. That's because we can't find find them.
Yeah.
Are you trying to have a district data set?
Yeah, that's exactly
I
right.
think you found one.
Okay, over here.
Hi, Dr. Daniel. I just had to say hi. He's part of the reason why I'm here. I work for DC Public Schools, and within the system, it's a systematic issue in terms of schools west of the park perform well. They can retain teachers. Schools east of the river have a hard time with retention, high turnover, difficult to make high test scores, difficult with enrollment. I can go on and on and on. What are some ways to possibly level the playing field so that schools east of the park can experience the same successes, teacher retention, teacher benefits, teacher tenure as they do west of the park? What are some ideas, suggestions? Because DC Public Schools have been struggling with that for years. They continue to struggle with it. They have tried to recruit teachers to work east of the river, Ward 7 and 8, which has, well, I can go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I can go on.
Linda?
Having lived here and with a nephew who went to school in Anacostia, experienced all the things you're talking about through the family lens. In New York City, some years ago, there was 1989, Joe Fernandez put out an RFP for schools to redesign themselves, and teachers and community organizations put forward proposals for redesigning schools that were intended to meet the needs of students more productively. And many, many, many new schools were created. Public schools, not charters, in the public system, kind of trying to give it an opportunity to rethink and reboot. And in many of those schools, which had high attrition, high turnover, low test scores, et cetera, in the Bronx and in various parts of the city, new teachers planted new ideas, many of which became extremely successful and now have much better outcomes and much better working conditions for teachers. What did they do? They redesigned schools so that teams of teachers could work with groups of students over periods of time. They redesigned the schools so that there was more time for teachers to collaborate with one another, so that by shifting the way the staffing was organized, they could get smaller class sizes, so that they could put in mentoring, teacher-to-teacher coaching and mentoring programs. One of the most outstanding examples, if you want to go see one, is Julia Richmond Education Complex, which was 2/3 of the kids dropping out, graffiti, police everywhere. They couldn't recruit teachers. It was a terrible place to work. It's now a complex with 4 small high schools, middle school for autistic children, an elementary school, and a nursery school, a health clinic, a teacher center, redesigned by teachers and community folks and so on. And now that complex, serving the same kids, much more low income and high minority than the district as a whole, has a 90% graduation rate, has a bustling life within the school, and is able to serve the needs of kids well. In DC, one of the things that hasn't really been opened up in recent years is the opportunity for people to rethink the way in which schooling could go on. And of course, there has to be a positive energy around the support of educators rather than a kind of punitive framework for all of that to work.
Cliff?
To build on what Linda said, I would offer this as a suggestion, having been in DC and built on the work that we did in Newark. Why not consider developing teacher-led schools? We created one in Newark, New Jersey, in the South Ward of Newark, New Jersey, where I met for about a year and a half with a group of teachers that wanted to transform a particular struggling school. We ended up agreeing that they would launch the effort in 2009, I think. And it's a teacher-led school, and it doesn't suggest that all principals ineffective, but it does affirm that what we do best, and when we do it very well, it is because of relationships that we have established within that school culture. The name of the school is Avon Brick Academy, and it's still going strong. It was part of a national effort. It was picked up in the New York Times, I think, in 2009 on the front cover. But I would offer that as a consideration in the mix of what you need to do district-wide, which is build into the contract time for teachers to develop and connect with one another during the school day. That's one of the things we did in our contract 6, 7 years ago. So I'll give you those two suggestions, one at a district level and one at a school level for your consideration.
Richard?
Yeah, just to follow up on both Linda and Cliff, there's actually a growing national movement of teacher-led schools, mostly centered in the Midwest, and they usually operate through charters, where a group of teachers get together and make an application for a charter school. And in Philadelphia now, there's a foundation which is supporting these kinds of schools, and they often call themselves partnership schools. They're explicitly modeled after law partnerships where the lawyers own the firm. The lawyers are the boss. There's not some CEO telling them what to do. They are the CEO. And this is a growing movement, teacher-led schools. The organizations are called Education Evolving and Education Visions. They both have web pages, and this is a growing movement, and it's a very much a professional model. The professionals are the experts, and they run the school, and they maybe hire someone to be their administrator. And they're held accountable.
And those kind of models can happen in charters or non-charters, where, for example, in New York, just local schools can, with the blessing of the union, create their local contract at the school level.
Dr. Perkins?
And I'm kind of be a wild duck kind of person. So why don't we just kind of look at, this is out of the box, just thinking that, you know, the teachers who are on the other side of town, why don't you flip-flop and integrate some of that into the evaluation system? That's it.
Okay, I'd like to thank all of our presenters for what I think was an excellent panel.